Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jamaica 411. I would like to say a special welcome back to my subscribers. And of course, it's always lovely to have you and reading your comments. So please, subscribers, please keep the comments going. Yes. Please also, everyone, give the video a thumbs up from now on. Please go ahead, give the video a thumbs up from now on. And if you have not yet done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel because you know what old time people say. Yes, encouragement sweetens labor. Are true. I would also appreciate it if you would share this video. And for all your kindness, I thank you all in advance. Well, now that you're back with me, let's get down to business. So, as you all know, it is crunch time. Yes, only, let's see, we're in March. So it's April, May, June, July, August, September. 6 months before the general elections is due. Yes, it's constitutionally due in September. And if some persons may be wondering what all that means, according to the Constitution, when a government is elected, its term begins at the first sitting of Parliament, not election night, but the first sitting of Parliament. So when they sat in Parliament first, yes, that's when the term begins, and when it ends is on the anniversary of the first sitting in Parliament. And guess what? Nobody ever seems to remember when them sit down in a Parliament first. So all we can say is sometime in September and after the 3rd of September, which was the date of the election. So that is what all of that means. So the time came for the Englishman to get on his feet and make his presentation to the nation. And it's him we come to talk about today. Because he came with a bag of promise. And when we sit down and wait now and say, okay, because you know, old time people said the proof, oh, you go again, D? The proof of the pudding is in the eating. The proof of the pudding is in the eating, right? So when a man come and tell you, say, I'm going to buy you a car, it sound good and you like the idea. But if the man don't have no money, then how am I going to buy you the car? Which means the promise is empty. He making you a promise that him ought to know him can't fulfill because him don't have the means to buy the car. In other words, it is wishful thinking. He would like to buy you the car. He don't have the means to buy the car. He hope one day him can buy you the car. But instead of telling you say him not have the means, him a come tell you say him go buy your car. Now, you foolish enough to go take that promissory note and run with it and make yourself happy away upon this car and it will never come. So when they come telling you they're going to do A or B, they have to tell you how they're going to fund it. Are you seeing what I'm saying? And if they can't tell you how they're going to fund it, then, well, maybe you can try to decipher for yourself to see whether or not perhaps there is a way in which they can fund it. And if there is, then you can have hope. All you have to do is say, man, you know how the money, you know. Over there, so if you look into the money, you can use that. You understand? Now, in the previous video that I did, I went through the budget video, the one that is presented by the government side. And that is the only budget that is of moment to you and me. So we want to know how the government was going to fund the $1.26 trillion. And they said they were going to get the bulk of it out of taxes, some out of non-tax revenue like fines and fees and other monies that the government collects, which is not generated by imposing tax. You understand? Yes. And then there are grants and the bauxite levy and so on. So that's how the government is going to fund the budget, which is the only one which matters. So with the election coming up, the Englishman would really now need to come and tell us, were he the government, what would he do? And of course, he began his presentation with all the negatives, all the things that the government failed to do in its tenure to this point. He started out by speaking about our national wealth is stagnant. So, if our national wealth is stagnant under this government, and by telling us that it is, it means that he now must come with his own solution to that problem. How is he going to get our national wealth to increase? He spoke about our economy is hardly growing. He outlined that problem, which means that he's going to have to come and tell us how he's going to make it grow. He spoke about the credit ratings remain constrained by deep structural weaknesses. He's going to have to identify those structural weaknesses and then propose his solution. When he spoke about the high crime, again, that being part of the reason why we're not growing, he's going to have to come and say what he would have done about that high crime. Are you following me so far? Yes. He spoke about the low productivity and weak demographics. Don't know what that means, but he's going to come and have to explain what that is and how he is going to solve the problem. He can't just come and just tell us that these are the problems and just leave it so. No, you'd identify the problem that you said the government cannot solve. Tell us how you're going to solve it. He spoke about the external shocks, Jamaica being vulnerable to external shocks, including weather related shocks. What is his proposal and what is his solution to that? How is he going to make us less vulnerable? Did we hear that in his speech? He spoke about macroeconomics indicators do not always tell the full story. He says that we have a statistically low unemployment numbers of 3.5%, but then he went on to say that Jamaica still suffers from chronic unemployment, low wages, and unstable incomes. He will need to come and tell us how is he going to get them other set of people that he said is unemployed, underemployed, those who are getting low wages. How is he going to solve the low wage problem? And how is he going to solve the unstable income problem? Did we hear any of that in his speech? I don't recall, right? He spoke about the World Bank saying that 50% of the non-agricultural jobs, well, that sounds like everything else that is outside of agriculture, right? And he said they are informal. Now, informal, I suppose, means that they're not paying taxes, right? Them outside of the system. And he said they have no benefits or any security. And he did mention giving some benefits to these people by offering them rent to own in the NHD. Did you realize that it was the persons classified as informal workers? They are the ones who's going to be benefiting from this rent to own. Listen to his speech again, right? He spoke about Jamaican people being employed, but many are still struggling and are essentially working poor. He has to come and tell us, since him said that in 9 years the government, this is what the government has accomplished, right? After the previous government, the PNP government, set the fundamentals right. It was now time for us to grow. And he's saying that that never happened. And he mentioned it. So presumably he's going to come and tell us how he's going to stop the people from struggling, right? And how he's going to solve this business of working poor. The question is, did we hear any solution in his budget speech? And if he did provide solutions, are these solutions, well, really solutions? Are they workable? Can they be implemented? What's the cost component? Because those things are very important factors.
If employment is increasing, but your economy is not growing, it means that productivity is falling. If employment is increasing but national wealth is stagnant, it means that jobs are being created, but they are low-paying jobs that cannot sustain a decent quality of life.
Again, more pointing out of problems. Productivity is falling, and there's a matter of low-paying jobs that cannot sustain a decent quality of life. Right? How is he going to solve these problems? What is he going to implement to increase the productivity in the country?
Mr. Speaker, you cannot use statistics to tell a struggling man that he's not struggling. You cannot use statistics to tell a hungry child that she's not hungry, or an underpaid worker that he or she is doing well in life. People know what the reality of their lives is.
I think we can all agree here. Nor can you use statistics and reports to tell a man that is doing better than, well, you want us to believe. Right? You can use statistics to tell him that he's not doing well either. So it goes both ways.
They know that the official statistics can't yam. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica has the second highest rate of brain drain in the world. The aspiration of most of our people is to migrate to other countries where there are better opportunities to step up in life. We struggle to keep our university graduates and other trained professionals here in Jamaica.
You make it sound as if this is a very desirable thing. And of course it is. And yet, the vice president of the People's National Party was in Southeast St. Elizabeth the other day, telling people, the young people, that him go and get them trained so that people from foreign can come and employ them. He wants us to pay for those children, right? To go build somebody else's society. Just the kind of thing you expect from a traitor.
Mr. Speaker, another area where the data confirm what we have been saying is in our trade deficit. We are not producing enough, either for our own use or to sell abroad. Jamaica has a massive chronic trade deficit. Imports of US $6.1 million annually, but exports of just $1.5 million US dollars in the first 10 months of 2024, that data is. This gap is mainly financed by remittances, money sent home by our family members in the diaspora who support their loved ones here at home. Now, even that is under some threat with all the global uncertainties. Jamaica cannot plan its future based on such a deep reliance on remittances, which we do not control. We need to execute a strategy to reduce this vulnerability. Our main imports are oil and gas, which in 2023 was at US $3.8 billion. And they remain our main sources of fuel for electricity and transportation. And also food to feed our people and our tourist visitors at 1.6 million US in 2023 is on that list. Mr. Speaker, we must replace imported fuels as much as possible by renewable energy sources.
So this is like a broken record, right? Everybody comes and we must have this renewable energy, and they're not making any effort to get it done. So this is just one of those things that the politicians say, right? That is an ideal that they are never able to accomplish. So take this as a grain of salt. It will not happen. They have not the capacity intellectual, apparently, to bring it about. Neither do we have the connections or even the money.
Like solar and hydro and wind that we are blessed with in abundance. Right. Similarly, we must produce food here to rely less on imports from abroad. Right. We need to grow the Jamaican economy so that everyone has the opportunity to earn a good life right here where we live. Mr. Speaker, after the Minister of Finance's presentation, the country really needs to be reminded that it was the last PNP administration which in 2014 passed the Financial Administration and Audit Amendment Act. It set the targets that now establish 60% of debt to GDP as something that we are required to meet by a prescribed date, and the rules and the formula in the fifth schedule to the Act that the government now uses to determine how much fiscal space they have. I chaired the Legislation Committee of Cabinet, which finalized the details of that Act, working with others, including the present Fiscal Commissioner, who was at that time a technocrat in the Ministry of Finance. It is that transformational legislative achievement that has guided the fiscal policy decisions that have resulted in Jamaica's remarkable performance in debt reduction over the past 12 years. Even former Minister of Finance Nigel Clark had to acknowledge the PNP's role in steadying the ship in his 2020 budget presentation. He said, moving forward in a direction of national unity, I want to take a moment to recognize the work done by the prior administration, in particular, former Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller and former Finance Minister Dr. Peter David Phillips in doggedly pursuing the extended fund facility and rallying Jamaicans around it. That's right. The historical record is clear. The crucial reforms and economic management that have created the long-term stability in Jamaica's finances began with the last PNP administration under Portia Simpson Miller with Dr. Peter Phillips as Finance Minister. They understood the historic nature of their assignment and they championed change. We acknowledge that the current government continued what we had started. Jamaica has benefited from continuity in this journey. True. But let no one forget, we did the heavy lifting. We did the heavy lifting to take Jamaica out of a deep debt crisis. And we set Jamaica on a sustainable fiscal path. And this was after the JLP government of 2007 to 2011 couldn't cross it and run left it. It was not in their DNA, right, Julian? On Thursday, our spokesperson for finance irrefutably established that Jamaica's tremendous achievement in public debt reduction is a PNP baby. We are proud of that achievement and that legacy, and we remain, most importantly, we remain fully committed to fiscal discipline. Mr. Speaker, we will not do anything that would jeopardize the sacrifices that have been made by the Jamaican people to get our country where we are.
Now, that was a comment that was necessary. We will not do anything to jeopardize the sacrifices that we have made. Yes, because Favor came out and sounded the alarm, which gave the distinct impression that they were saying that them only want to get hold of the NIR to spend it for short-term benefit. Julian denied it, and here is Mark talking now that we won't do anything at all to jeopardize all of that. So now, again, for the second time, they are counting out the use of the NIR, liquidating any part of it in order to finance whatever programs they're coming with. This is what he's saying. We won't do anything to jeopardize that. And Favor would say if you were to liquidate the NIR, you will be jeopardizing all our gains that we made and take a few steps back.
Mr. Speaker, the JLP government loves to refer to running with it. Why was that comment ever made 2 decades ago? The then finance minister was referring to the continuation of the construction of the East-West Highway from Mandela to Maypen, which the Jamaica Labour Party had opposed. So opposed to it were they that they disciplined the mayor of Spanish Town at the time, Dr. Ramos Notice, for attending the opening of that leg of the highway. But in what can only be called a supreme irony, they have extended the same highway to Williamsfield, and that same highway is now being sold on the market to raise money for this coming fiscal year's budget. Oh, what a tangled web. Oh, what a tangled web they weave when they practice to deceive. Mr. Speaker, what about the current situation? The budget for this fiscal year now ending, 2024-25, was funded by over 70 billion of non-tax revenues, which came from the sale of 12 years of future income. That meant that what is to be earned over 12 years from Jamaica's future revenues from the Norman Manley International Airport was sold, and sold so that that money could be spent now. How was the money used? To finance various recurrent expenses. To finance various recurrent expenses. A one-time so-called reverse income tax credit. 1 year of some other tax relief that is going to be an ongoing annual cost to the budget. And some other expenditures. And some other expenditures. None of these will have a lasting beneficial impact on the future of this country. None of these will have a lasting beneficial impact on the future of this country.
So you heard him. How was the money used? This $70 billion, he said it was over $70 billion, that the government would have received from future selling or selling the future earnings of the Norman Manley International Airport, that he make out is a bad thing. And he said, how was the money spent? Right? To finance various recurrent expenses. Right? That means to say the government had bills to pay and then use some of that money to pay the bills. That's what that means. Then now, he said it was used also to finance a one-time so-called reverse income tax credit. That $20,000 that you had, yes, that him talk about. So some of that money was used for that purpose. And then he said it was used also to finance a 1 year of some other tax relief that is going to be an ongoing annual cost to the budget, right? So the government gave tax relief in other areas, and him said that some of that money was used for that too, and that is going to be an ongoing cost to the budget, whatever it is. If it costs say $1 billion, every year we have to go find $1 billion as well. Then he said, and some other expenditures. You notice I'm saying it casually, and some other expenditures. Well, we're going to see what those other expenditures are shortly. But then he went on to say, listen to this part, and I want you to remember it, None of these will have a lasting beneficial impact on the future of this country. He's saying that the government was entitled to receive a revenue from the Norman Manley International Airport, and then they sold that future income in order to get that money today. 12 years of income, he said, that no future government will have access to that because the government sold it and don't get the money already and they spent it. And he's saying that, but look at what them spend it on, right? According to him, them spend it to give the $20,000 to the citizens, give it back, right? and then them giving some other kind of tax relief to some other set of people, and them spend it on some other things. And none of those things are going to bring any dividend for us. So we spend the money, essentially saying the money is wasted. That money is not available to us. That money was used in a wasteful way, and there is nothing that is going to benefit the country from having spent that money. That's what he said. Now, let us now go to the facts. And to get at those facts, we're going to turn to the observer because I found that they gave a lot of explanation to some of the terminology and make it easy for us to understand, or easier. It says government eyes $69 billion from Norman Manley International Airport. It was published September 20, 2024. So the observer said the government of Jamaica will be looking to raise up to 440 million US dollars, or the equivalent of 69.2 billion Jamaican dollars, in the international capital markets as it seeks to sell the future receivables that the Airports Authority of Jamaica collects from Norman Manley International Airport. This was revealed on Tuesday as S&P Global Ratings gave Kingston Airport Revenue Finance LLC, King Air, an initial preliminary credit rating of BB with a stable outlook, a notch above Jamaica's own sovereign credit rating of BB minus. S&P is Standard & Poor's. Now, what is this all about? They're saying that the government is going on the international capitals market to raise 440 million US dollars. And they will be selling the future receivables, meaning they are in a contract. They already entered into contract with a management group to manage the airport, and that group is supposed to pay some money to government. But I'm going to let the observer explain it further. So any obligation that is owed to you is known as receivables, and that was what the government would have sold, right, for the $69 billion that you hear Mark Bowling refer to. It says King Air will be the special purpose vehicle, SPV, that will be assigned the rights to collect the monthly concession fee from Norman Manley International Airport. So they're setting up a company called King Air, and the sole purpose for which it exists is to collect the monthly concession from the Norman Manley International Airport. So this is telling us that the revenue that you hear Mark Bowling talking about, that the government sold, it comes in the form of monthly concession fee. So the managers were supposed to be paying to the government a monthly concession fee, right? And now that they're going to sell the receivables, and it will be explained further, they need a kind of a middleman in order to collect the fees from the management company and then distribute it among the persons who are investors. But we will come to that, right? Now it says the senior secured notes would have a tenure up to 2036, with the final size of the offer to be determined shortly based on the final coupon. So they are saying at this stage that the instrument, whatever it is they're creating, which was a bond, it will mature in 2036. That is a 12-year period now that Goling was talking about, right? And the coupon, which is kind of like an interest, they are to determine that as well. They get to determine it. They are quoting somebody now, and it says, at the direction of the government, the Airports Authority of Jamaica plans to transfer its revenue share from the concession to a bankruptcy remote, non-recourse special purpose vehicle, King Air. The latter will raise 440 million US dollars in senior secured, and then name out the something, S notes. The note holders will have a pledge of the shares of King Air, the right to receive its revenue share, and an offshore cash funded DSRA, which is a debt service reserve account, stated the Standard & Poor Global Ratings document. Massa, I don't know who then they expect to be understanding this, but let me see if we can try. Now, because this article is written back to front, in other words, they give you the information and then they give the explanation. I will have to give you the explanation now, because they said that the Airports Authority of Jamaica owns the Norman Manley International Airport. And so it is to that entity that the concession fees were supposed to be paid. So now that the government had an idea in mind that they would like to collect the money that is owed today, they instructed the persons at the Airports Authority of Jamaica to transfer the shares to this company called King Air so that the middleman can do him thing. But it's not just an ordinary arrangement. If many of you would recall that arrangement that Omar Davis or FinSAC entered into with Bunting, where they had gotten what Audley Shaw was calling a sweetheart deal, where there was some money that the government supposed to collect the June, but they needed the money desperately for the budget. So Bunting was the one who made an arrangement to sell those future revenue which would not have fallen due to the government until the June. And so he went and he found some investors. They made it, they call it securitized it. They made it into a kind of a security so that they can now sell to the investors, and the investors will get back the money at a certain time in the future, right? Their arrangement was a recourse to government, meaning that if Bunting failed to get back the money that Jocelyn was supposed to pay the government for having, purchased some debts, and if them fail to get it at the time, the government would have to find the money and pay him. You follow? That was a recourse to the government. This one now is a non-recourse to government, meaning that if King Air, failed to sell the bonds, then after them lost that, not us. That's the difference. But let me continue. So they're saying basically that that is what King Air was supposed to do. So now that they have all that arranged, let's see what comes next. So just before we get down to the nitty-gritty, let us understand what it is that they mean by securitizing. It says securitizing or selling receivables. So securitizing means selling receivables. Usually involves transferring the rights attached to receive a stream of income from a particular source into a special vehicle such as King Air, whose sole purpose is to direct the proceeds, which is what they receive, back to the investors. So what does this mean? So they're explaining that securitizing is about selling receivables. Receivables is what somebody owes to you by obligation, right? So let us say you're in business and you sold some goods to a company and you have an arrangement with them where they would pay you in 30 days. So that money now becomes a receivable. You can decide that, look, I need this money desperately, and you can sell that receivable to maybe another company or somebody who can give you the cash money quick, and then now them go collect the money from that person. That's what this is about when they talk about securitizing and selling of receivables. So the matter now of the rights that is attached to receive a stream of income. Now for this transaction, you're talking about something else. You're talking about the type of receivables that have an income attached, for argument's sake. You go into the bank or you go to Jamaica National and you borrow some money to buy a house. That money is a loan that is called a mortgage. And that mortgage may be for 20 years. And then they tell you how much you must pay monthly for that 20 years. Well, you can be there paying to the Jamaica National, and all of a sudden you get a notice that somebody else owns the debt and you must pay the money to them instead. For example, it might be sold to Jocelyn, for argument's sake, or some other bank or some other companies that specialize in purchasing debt like that. So when they talk about transferring the rights attached to receive the income stream, they are talking about you actually paying the money to that other company that now owns the debt. Jamaica National would have to transfer their rights in the mortgage to that company for them to be able to collect from you. That is what I understand that to mean. You follow? Yes. Now, in the case of the Norman Manley International Airport, it was King Air that was set up to receive the rights to collect the concession fee. You follow? So it was the Airports Authority of Jamaica that who owns or which owns the Norman Manley International Airport. They own it, so the managers were paying a concession fee to them. And then now, because the government wanted to sell the receivables, the company was set up and Airports Authority of Jamaica then transferred their rights to collect the fees to King Air. So King Air can now collect it, right, on behalf of their investors because they are now going to be selling the receivables at a discount to investors who care to purchase. And that's how the government now will get the $440 million. But let's read on. So they're saying here that this is the first time the Jamaican government has done this kind of securitization on the international markets and comes almost a year after the country issued a 46.6 billion Jamaican dollar linked international bond, which is equivalent to 300 million US. So the government has done it before. This is the first time they've tried this, which is the reason why you hear Mark Gordon talking about it, right? So he said now the use of the proceeds, what the proceeds were to be used for, wasn't mentioned in the document. That is a document. So what they were going to use the money for wasn't mentioned, but the funds would be available for the government of Jamaica to use in any of its desired projects. Notice those words. So the observer wanted clarity, and if you read the last few lines, it says, while Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark couldn't provide additional details due to it being an ongoing offer, he did note that more details would be announced shortly and that this isn't Government of Jamaica debt being taken on. So he's saying that this is not a debt. And so the fact that Nigel Clark said so would almost give the impression that that is why the government entered into this instrument in order to avoid acquiring more public debt. Remember, they are trying to reduce the amount of debt to GDP to 60%. So if they had gone the normal way and borrowed the money, it would have increased the debt stock and defeat the purpose. That is my impression of what is happening here. They went on to say Dr. Clark had announced in his March 2024 budget speech that the government would be raising approximately $45 billion by securitizing its receivables. So this is not news. So when the Englishman had said, oh, what tangled web we weave when first we set out to deceive, he is implying that the government did not tell us and tried to hide it from us. And now they've been found out. But here it is, September of 2024, the Observer saying that Nigel Clark had made the announcement in the budget debate. What was Mark Golding doing? Sleeping? Hmm? It says, listen to this now. So Nigel said he was going to raise this money, right? 45 billion by securitizing the receivables. In other words, you go and sell it, right? At a discount. Now it says approximately 25.12 billion would be allocated to cover the foregone taxes on revenue that the government of Jamaica wouldn't receive from some of its new tax measures, right? It goes on to say the biggest expenditure items from those measures included the increase in the income tax threshold. So they use some of that money, 25 billion out of the 45 billion, to finance the loss of revenue that they were going to incur because they increased the income tax threshold, which was set to cost $8.95 billion. So that is what that would have cost. And the reverse tax credit, which would cost $11.4 billion. Right? When you add the two together, what you get is $20 billion. Right? So that means that they use $5 billion for something else. Now, I need you to listen to this very carefully, right? It said the remaining $20 billion from the sale would be used to cover part of the government of Jamaica's capital expenditure budget. And you remember what that is, right? That is where the money going to go now to fix your road and your bridges and any buildings that the government may have going on and build road and all them sitting there. So when you hear him said, and some other expenditures, he was trying to deceive you by giving the impression that the government never used the money to do anything at all that was beneficial to the country. How can you trust anything that come out of this man's mouth? We told you already you cannot. He went and built up a straw man, claiming that the government used all of this money and wasted it and we got nothing out of it. Nothing at all that would benefit the country. That's what he said. None of these will have a lasting beneficial impact on the future of this country. Building road don't have a lasting impact. Because it says here that the remaining $20 billion from the sale would be used to cover part of the government of Jamaica's capital expenditure budget. What are these? One of those initiatives is the $40 billion shared prosperity through accelerated improvement to our road network, Spark. So part of that money went towards the Spark program, which is to patch your road. Remember your ball and so your road them not done good and them want to fix. That is what the government sold the receivables in Norman Manley International Airport to do, to fix your road. How can that not be a good thing? And how is it possible that the Englishman never knows there is a spark program the money was spent on? And yet him say, none of these will have a lasting beneficial impact on the future of this country. It was he who set out to deceive. How him never knows it was for the spark program? Fact, check everything that come out of that man's mouth. That's why we call him Liar Golding. He went and mentioned him that in the parliament, that the man has some nerve and no damn shame. But he was very careful about what he said. He said his father was the pioneer for the Mona rehab. I wonder what Warming going to say about that. Because that was a colossal mistake. He was no damn pioneer. He was not in the country when it was being repaired, when the decision was made, and when the buildings were being retrofitted in order to house the polio victims. Damn lie. And we catch him again, telling the people that the money was spent on wasteful activities. Another thing too, this dunce should know, is that the reverse income tax credit, the $20,000 that people got, how you mean to say that it's not beneficial to the country in the long run? That's money in the hands of consumers, and when them spend it, business is going to profit. And how much billion? 11 billion was pumped into the economy through the hands of the consumers. So we should see some little amount of growth if it was impactful enough for business to start to invest, right? Then we may see something. Not quite sure, we just have to wait. So that is that. Now, why would usually it's companies, you remember they say it's the first time the government in Jamaica would be taking this particular step. It's usually done though by businesses. Now the question is, why would businesses normally sell their receivables? Well, if they have a crisis, you know, debt that they need to pay, they might choose to sell some of their receivables, right? If they are going out of business, they will sell the receivables to some other business and get that money to, pay their workers and whatever else they have to do, like settle debts. But the main reason why it is done by companies is so that they'll have that money to use now. And let me tell you where it is used a lot in the United States. And let me give you a practical example. Let us say, for example, you have a bank, and the bank has money, say 100 million, and the bank loan each of 10 customers 10 million each. So that's 10 customers, right? And they are going to get, say, 10% interest. So the bank would get $110 million annually for, say 5 years. So the bank loan that money. When the bank loan out that money, it has no further revenue coming in other than the installments that the 10 people be paying back, right? And what they realized, or somebody came up with this brilliant idea, that if they could take the debt of the bank, buy the debt from the bank for, say, in this case, let us say they bought it for 105 million. So the bank will be making 5 million off of the deal, right? So the bank then sold the whole portfolio, right, to another company. And that company give them $105 million. Guess what? That bank can now lend that $105 million again to some other set of people. And then when they enter into the mortgage arrangement and them sign off and then go about them business with them loan, the bank would then immediately sell that loan again to the same company who would then give them the 105 million again so they can lend. So whereas the bank only had deposits of 100 million to lend, with this selling of the receivables, which is the loan to a third party, they will now be able to get the cash money again to lend to somebody else. So let us say, for argument's sake, the bank may well enter into that arrangement 5 times for the year. What they would have done is loan $500 million instead of just the $100 million that they have. You see the benefit of it? Yes. So when the government sold the receivables to collect the money today, it is for the government to use that money now that will benefit the country in such a way that by the time the 12 years pass, we ought to have grown. So the money is going to be used to finance government projects, capital projects. And you remember what the capital projects, the aim is for the government to get a return on that investment. If they build a new road, you may find more persons investing in that area, and so investments mean more revenue to government. And this is the reason why the government now would sell its receivables so that it can invest that money today, get a return on that investment for tomorrow. So by the time the 12 years pass and the back getting that fee, the concession fee from the managers, then they are hoping that we would be in a much better position than if we had waited, not done any investment today, and find that the infrastructure is even in a worse state. after 12 years. So is selling those receivables a good thing or a bad thing? I would say it's a good thing, and let me tell you why. One, the government can use the sale of those receivables, use that money today to make investments today, right? And what it does, first of all, it prevents the government from raising taxes. That's the first thing. And the second thing it does is that it's not a loan. And the third thing that it does is that it repairs the roads. Now, you're going to say, oh, but the government won't have the benefit of it after it done fix the road. Of course it will, because the bloody road fix. How can that not be beneficial? You see it now? Yes. If they did not get that money, if they had not entered into that arrangement, you wouldn't be able to have your road fixed unless the government go and raise taxes. Because the monies are spoken for. Remember, we went through that already. Yes. So it is a very clever arrangement that the government use. It's normally a business arrangement. The government decide to enter into it, and it's very clever because it solves all the problems. And the government is not really losing any revenue if after it makes the investment in the roads and other things, they're getting more revenue because there's more business activities and therefore more revenue coming in. It may well make up for the shortfall. Now, the final thing I want you to remember is that this is not a free money to the government. There's actually a 6.75% coupon, which is kind of like a loan, but that the government is going to be paying to the investors every year, right? For 12 years. And then it has to, if I remember how the bond thing works, I think they have to buy back the bond at that stage. So I think we now all understand why it was that Andrew Holness was saying about the Spark program, that they're going to make sure that them get people who are qualified to build the roads. You know why? Because the government will need those roads to be stay built for more than 12 years for us to see the real benefit. Because if the road them mash up after them building 3 years, then that money would have been wasted and the concession will return back to the government yet. You follow? So so for him to be spending that money to fix the road now, he would need those roads to stay built for 12 or more years. And then now we see the real benefit of having sold those receivables, because in 12 years' time, Airports Authority of Jamaica will have back those rights and they will once again be collecting the concession fee unless the government finds some other occasion or some other reasons to be selling the receivables again. So I hope I was able to bring some clarity on the matter. I hope that you understand what is going on and who the deceiver really is. He's the Englishman.
Mr. Speaker, recurrent expenditures ought properly to be funded from revenues generated in the year in which those expenditures are incurred.
Coming to try and deceive you to make you believe that something is wrong. Very possibly, or he might carry on, he actually thinks that there is something wrong. And if he does, it only goes to show that he knows not a damn thing about how financing works, because he, after all, is a mere lawyer. Anyway, folks, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me, for sharing, liking, and subscribing, and leaving your comments in the comments section. Until next time, take very good care of yourselves and walk good.